You know, you could have just done this in the first place instead of doing Puyo Puyo with a Kirby skin. Or hell, just give me another Tetris attack. AKA Puzzle League. AKA Panel de Pawn. They really should bring that one back. We're long overdue, but... yeah, well. Yeah, do me a favor and pretend you didn't see this one coming, and act surprised as we venture into today's subject matter, Kirby Star Stacker for Game Boy, released in 1997. And unlike the Super Famicom version we looked at some time ago, which was a Japanese exclusive, this Game Boy port actually did get localized and released around these parts. This one's also available on NSO/Nintendo Classics, whatever they're calling it these days, but that version doesn't have Super Game Boy compatibility, which Kirby Star Stacker supports, with a Kirby-themed border, some special color palettes, and apparently there's even enhanced sound effects, which I really didn't notice in playing the two versions. I don't know. Here's a sample so you can hear for yourself. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's move on. Kirby Star Stacker, in case you need a refresher of sorts, is a puzzle game where you place blocks or tiles of stars and animals down a well, and if two or more tiles of animals of the same type touch each other, they clear away from the board. But your main deal is clearing the star tiles, which is done by sandwiching them in between two animal tiles so that they're all cleared out. If you manage to chain a number of line clears, Kirby will shoot out some more stars that can help out with further cleaning if possible, or just add to your point tally. The game is over when no more tiles are able to enter from the top, which means keeping the middle two columns as clear as possible. Much like the console version, Star Stacker has several modes of play. The main round clear mode, where your goal is to clear away star tiles to knock off hit points from the counter before moving on to the next round, with 3 difficulty settings available to choose from, as well as an unlockable 4th round, each of which vary in the number of rounds you play through. I did notice that the Game Boy version has more rounds in this mode than the Super Famicom version. Go figure. You also have a versus mode via Game Link, a time attack mode, and a challenge mode, which is your endless marathon play until you eventually die mode. Kirby Star Stacker on Game Boy plays fairly similarly to the Super Famicom release, although I noticed that this version plays a bit slower than the console release. I'm not saying this is any easier though. At higher levels and skill settings where drop speeds are fast and stone blocks requiring 2 line clears are introduced to the mix, a session of Star Stacker can go pear-shaped fairly quickly if one isn't careful. Regardless, this is a fairly straightforward game that isn't too difficult to figure out, though the game does include a tutorial mode that teaches you how to play the game if you really need it. Controls fairly straightforward, D-pad moves your blocks, buttons rotate, start button pauses, nothing too complex I think. Graphically, the Game Boy version of Kirby Star Stacker is pretty much business as usual with these Kirby games on the system. There's a couple bits of mild recycling of sprite assets, but the rest of the graphical presentation is pretty solid. Clean looking layout menus and such. The audio is also on par with prior Kirby entries, some recycled sound effects here and there along with some appropriately Kirby sounding music tracks, the same ones you'll find on the console version, but more fitting because they're on Game Boy. Which means nothing other than it fits the style of the previous Game Boy entries, so mission accomplished I suppose. Overall, Kirby Star Stacker is another fun puzzler to add to the Game Boy pile. The usual easy to get into, difficult to master sort of thing that's different enough from the usual fare, quite a few modes of play to keep the replay value up, and again it's not Puyo Puyo, so that's a win in my book. All in all, not too shabby.